The top business stories live from the Sky News City studio. Currys shares surge on news profits for the year will beat expectations. I'll be hearing from the chief executive. Sainsbury's is to wind down its banking division. It could potentially affect nearly 2 million customers. And Royal Mail delivers its best festive figures for 4 years. Good morning, this is Business Live with me, Ian King. Shares of Currys have surged by 9% this morning after the UK's biggest electrical goods retailer said profits for the year would be better than expected. Currys said it had enjoyed a successful peak trading period, that's the 10 weeks to the 6th of January, despite a tough trading environment. It now expects to report adjusted pre-tax profits of between £105 to £115 million for the year to the end of April, compared with the £104 million that the market was previously looking for. Well, joining me now is Alex Baldock, the chief executive of Currys. Alex, good to see you this morning. Your like-for-likes in the UK and Ireland during the period were down 3%. So I assume with margins remaining stable, this was a modest drop in volumes.
Good morning, Ian. Yeah, the market has been tough, and the consumer in the UK remains pretty hard pressed. They've been quite cautious about their spending, so we haven't had any tailwinds from growing consumer confidence, that's for sure. What we have been able to do is to keep margins stable at a time when other people's have been coming under pressure. And we've done a really good job of controlling our own costs. It's been a pretty disciplined performance this peak, making the most of the sales that were out there, but making sure that margins and costs were healthy. And that, plus the getting the Nordics back on track, which we needed to do, and we are doing, is what's allowing us to upgrade our profit expectations today.
Give me some detail about what sold well during the peak period and what did less so well.
Mobile sold particularly well, which, given the history of that category with us, was particularly pleasing. We're back into profitable growth and share gain there, especially on the more expensive premium devices and new innovation like foldable. And the other big trend was energy efficient appliances. Consumers are still concerned about their energy bills, and they're willing to pay a bit more upfront for some more expensive A-rated washing machines and tumble dryers and the like, knowing that they're going to get that money back and more over the life of the washing machine. So we've had plenty of success there. Other than that, gaming continues to power forward. People are still buying all the latest consoles, and over-ear headphones have proved a bit of a hit. So there's been plenty of bright spots, in a tough trading environment, and we've been able to make the most of them.
Obviously, the trick with retail is not to come out of Christmas with an excess of stock. What was your stock position like coming out of the period?
We're pretty clean. No, we're in good shape on stock. We've managed to pull off that difficult feat of having strong customer availability, but without consuming too much cash. I mean, our availability was up 21 percentage points on 2 years ago, which speaks to great work from our commercial and supply chain teams. And that's one of the things that allowed us to have a successful peak. But we're also still guiding to a year-end cash flow position that's better year on year.
Now, you note in the statement that consumers remain under pressure. Are you confident that you can keep this momentum going into the current quarter?
Yes, we are. The consumer does remain under pressure, and we're not counting on any immediate recovery of that. I mean, the housing market remains in the doldrums. People have yet to feel the full hit of interest rates rises, and consumer confidence is still pretty patchy. So our planning assumes that the consumer and the consumer environment stays pretty depressed. On the other hand, we don't need that. We don't need a boost to consumer confidence to continue to inch our way forwards as we're doing. I mean, our progress on gross margins with the solutions and the services selling in that didn't depend on it, and our progress on services, in particular credit and repair services, haven't depended on a boom in consumer confidence. All of that said, it will be welcome when it comes, because we've built a really disciplined business that's able to operate and resiliently and eke out advancing profits even in a tough environment. But clearly, when the consumer's more confident and has more money to spend, that'll be better for everybody.
And how concerned are you, Alex, about what's going in the Red Sea at the moment? Obviously, a lot of the goods that you stock are imported from Asia. It's a key shipping route. Is this going to hit you at all?
we're keeping a very close eye on this, and clearly, if the problems in the Red Sea were to escalate or to last for much longer, then clearly everybody would be affected. As it stands, though, we're not expecting or experiencing a significant impact. It's worth remembering, Ian, that supply chain disruption is hardly a novel experience for us. We've experienced multiple waves of it over the past 4 years. We've made some big improvements in our own supply chain, and of course we benefit from being market leader in being first in the queue for scarce stock amongst our suppliers. So we've worked hard to make sure that we can absorb periods of disruption. There are a few products that are 7 to 14 days late, but nothing that anyone will notice going into a Currys store or onto the website. But this is a situation, clearly, we wouldn't want to get any worse or last for much longer, and we'll keep a very close eye on it.
And what about product launches, Alex? I mean, obviously, Samsung are launching the S24 Galaxy this week. Is that going to deliver a boost to you at all?
AI, which is what you're talking about there, Ian, is definitely going to be a big boost in the longer term, probably more in 2025, where we expect a significant boost than 2024, which will largely be about early adopters. But Currys exists to bring the complex and sometimes scary and expensive world of technology within reach of people. And so AI is right up our street, and it'll be our job to work with our suppliers like Samsung, like Microsoft, Intel, HP, and others who are all super excited about the possibilities that AI will bring within reach for consumers. It's our job to demystify this and explain it and bring it within reach. And we're looking forward to doing that. In phones, yes, which can do things like instant translation and much improved photography. It might even make me look like a half-decent photographer, but also on computing, where the real benefits of AI in terms of having a hyper-personalized, hyper-intelligent assistant at your beck and call 24/7 who gets to know you and help you more, as well as to small businesses who we also serve with the creativity and productivity gains that we expect to see from AI there. That's right up our street, and we intend to make it ours.
Okay, Alex, we have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Always good to catch up with you. Thanks very much for spending the time today. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ian.
Now, the World Economic Forum is continuing in Davos, with the UK Chancellor Jeremy Hunt due to hit town today. And there to greet him will be Sky's economics editor, Ed Conway. Ed, over to you.
Yeah, in fact, actually, Jeremy Hunt has arrived in town. He's just given one of his first appearances here at the Congress Hall at Davos. We're right in the heart of this meeting. You've got world leaders around here, you've got billionaires, you've got business people, you've got policymakers, you've got campaigners, all of them meeting, talking about all of the things that are on their mind. AI is one of the big issues that a lot of people are talking about, so that was the panel that the Chancellor was on. But as you can see, there's a lot of people milling around, and I'm going to kind of do this thing of just seeing who we can spot and whether there's anyone that we can talk to. I do see Michael McGrath, the Irish Finance Minister, right here.
Hi,
Minister, thank you for talking to us.
Good to see you.
Tell me about your Davos. How does this compare to previous ones? What's the mood like? What's the reflections from the Irish standpoint?
This is my second day here and my second time at Davos, and I think there is concern about the global economy, concern about conflict, the rise of geopolitical tensions around the world. Inflation is falling, thankfully, but monetary policy is acting as a drag on the growth prospects of many developed economies. So from an Irish perspective, our offering here is one of a very stable policy environment, a government pursuing pro-business policies, an economy that's functioning very well, where trade and exports are indispensable to our overall economic model, and where we continue to invest in talent, in research, and provide a very good gateway to a market of 450 million people in the European Union.
It sounds like, so for a lot of people here, one of the big kind of overarching topics has been the risk of what we're seeing in the Red Sea crossing over, feeding through to inflation, because I mean, Ireland, like the UK, that you've got a cost of living squeeze that's been going on there. So are you concerned about that having a kind of contagion effect as well?
Yeah, I mean, there's considerable uncertainty about the global economy, and wherever you have uncertainty, investment decisions tend to get stalled. So that is the risk that I think we're all facing into in 2024. And for small, open, export-oriented economies like Ireland, that's something that we're particularly alert to. So we have to manage the levers that are under our control, manage our public finances well, make sure we pursue policies that are pro-business, pro-employment. We have an economy in Ireland now where unemployment is less than 5%. We are anticipating the economy will grow in 2024, and our public finances are in good health. So we have to remain competitive. We've just transposed Pillar 2 of the OECD corporate tax deal, so that means the rate of tax now for the very large multinationals is 15%, but then allied to that we have improved the research and development tax credit in Ireland, which is a very attractive incentive because it's a refundable tax credit, and it's now at a rate of 30%.
Can I ask, a slightly more kind of domestic issue. In Northern Ireland right now, there are strikes. This is, Stormont has not been able to get the pay rises that particularly public sector workers might have hoped for. So, for a lot of people, it's very difficult in Northern Ireland. Ireland has said, you and the Taoiseach have said, we need to try and get that Stormont process going. Another deadline coming up tonight. Yeah. So, what are your reflections on that?
Well, you never want to see industrial action because the workers themselves certainly don't want to do it, and then the general public suffer when public services are suspended. And the weather is very cold at the moment in Ireland, so this is going to have a real impact. I think it underlines for all of us the imperative of getting the democratic institutions in Northern Ireland back up and running. We now are 2 years on from the suspension of Stormont effectively, and the Irish government, as co-guarantors of the Good Friday Agreement with the British government, are really anxious to do everything we can to get those democratic institutions back up and running, because in our experience, resolving issues like industrial relations disputes, entering into public pay agreements is really only possible where you have a functioning democracy and you have institutions that are working for the people that they're meant to be working for.
Michael McGrath, thank you so much for talking to us, and good luck on the rest of your time here. There we are, the Irish Finance Minister talking about what's going on in Northern Ireland, also what's happening more broadly at these meetings. We'll have more from you. It's kind of starting to kind of wind down at the moment, but it is still an interesting meeting, and more from the Chancellor coming up very soon.
Great stuff. Thanks, Ed. Some other business news stories for you now. And Sainsbury's said today it is to gradually withdraw from offering banking services after more than 25 years. It follows a decision by the UK's second largest supermarket to concentrate on its core retail businesses. It said financial services products it continued to offer in future would be provided by dedicated financial services providers through a distributed model, as it currently does with insurance. Well, Sainsbury's Bank launched in February 1997, initially as a joint venture with Bank of Scotland, with Sainsbury's taking full control in 2014. Watches of Switzerland lost more than a quarter of its stock market value today after warning that annual sales will be lower than expected. The UK's biggest distributor of Rolex watches originally expected sales this year to be up to £1.7 billion, but today they said they would be up to £1.55 billion. It said that sales in the US had remained strong, but in the UK the luxury market had been more challenging, with consumers instead spending more on fashion, beauty, hospitality and travel. The shares have been down by as much as 30% at one point this morning. They've now halved in the last 12 months. International Distribution Services, the parent company of Royal Mail, said today it enjoyed its best Christmas performance for 4 years. It said Royal Mail, which in November promised to pay postal workers a £500 bonus if delivery targets were met over the crucial festive period, achieved revenues of £2.3 billion during the final 3 months of 2023. That was up 13% on a year earlier. It said that during the period, parcel volumes rose by 21% as it won back customers lost during last year's strike action, while letter revenues rose by 12% due to price increases, although volumes were down by nearly a third on pre-pandemic levels. The home furnishings retailer Dunelm said this morning it had continued to grow sales over Christmas in spite of challenging market conditions and tough comparisons with last year. Dunelm, which employs more than 11,000 people in 183 stores, said total sales during the 13 weeks to the 30th of December came in at £483 million. That was up 1% on the same period a year earlier. But that represented a slowdown from the previous quarter, and the shares have fallen by 2%. Travis Perkins said today it plans to step up the cost-cutting initiatives it launched late last year. The UK's biggest builders merchants chain, which employs some 20,000 people, said it had cut a number of jobs both in head office and around the country during the final 3 months of last year. But it said that given market conditions were anticipated to remain subdued, it had accelerated plans to further reduce costs. It said this would cost an additional one-off £15 million, but over time it would save £35 million a year. Shares of Travis Perkins, which also owns Toolstation, have risen by 4%. Well, another lower close on Wall Street last night was followed by a mixed session for equities in the Asia-Pacific region overnight. Shanghai, which on Wednesday had fallen to its lowest level for nearly 5 years, rebounded amid talk of buying by state-backed funds. Well, in Europe, stocks have also rallied this morning. All the main continental indices are in positive territory. The yellow Lisa vest right now being worn by the MIB in Milan. Talking points today include the Swiss luxury group Richemont. Its shares are ahead by nearly 10% in Zurich after the owner of Cartier and Montblanc reported a recovery in quarterly sales. I think we've got a bit of Montblanc snow there on that picture. That's the European picture again. Here in London, the FTSE 100 also in positive territory, just about. It's up nearly 1/5%. Gains for consumer stocks are being balanced by losses in healthcare stocks. In terms of the gainers, well, the leading blue chip gainer in percentage terms is Flutter Entertainment. That's the owner of Paddy Power and Betfair. That's up 11% on a trading update. The Ladbrokes and Corals owner Entain is up 4.5% in sympathy. To the downside, Hikma Pharmaceuticals is off 2.5% on broker comment. Outside the FTSE, well, we've just been speaking to them. Currys is the leading mid-cap gainer, while the trading and investment platform AJ Bell is ahead 4.5% on a trading update. For the downside, the North Sea oil producer Harbour Energy is down by some 8.5% right now after reducing its production forecast for the year. On the foreign exchange markets, it's pretty quiet, to be honest. Look at that. Very little change among any of the main currency pairs. As for the oil price, well, that's continued to trade in the very narrow range that it has done for most of the last week. A barrel of Brent crude will currently cost you $78 on the nose. That's up a little over 1/6%. Well, joining me this morning is George Ligarius, the chief economist at Mazars Wealth Management. George, good to see you this morning. What a rotten start it's been to 2024 for equity markets. Obviously, interest rate expectations, which got a bit carried away at the end of last year, have unwound. Where do you see us going from here?
Okay, so the market obviously got a little bit ahead of itself, but then again, that's what markets do. You know what? I wouldn't call it a rotten start. I think we had a very, very nice rally at the end of the last year, so we're at a period of consolidation. And for me, actually, that's good news. You know, if we had a sharp drop after the rally in November and December, you know, that would mean we are in range trading. Now we are sort of close to the all-time highs, just not getting there, bouncing up and down around that. So that's your typical consolidation. I would wait for February to call it a consolidation technically, but this is what we're seeing right now.
George, we've talked in the past about the potential for central bankers having to talk down the markets. I mean, we've certainly had a bit of that from the US Federal Reserve in the last week.
Well, you see, the problem with traders, bond traders getting ahead of themselves is that they bring borrowing costs down. So remember when the Fed said we're not hiking anymore because the market has done the work for us? Well, when the opposite happens, then the Fed obviously is upset when yields go down. So now they're trying to, in essence, to talk rates up instead of actually doing something with rates. They're trying to bring long yields up and reduce those rate cut expectations, not because they're worried about market instability, but rather because they do not want money to become that cheap, because that's going to hinder the actual rate cuts. So it's very natural that they would do it from the Fed's perspective. And Lagarde was a little bit more dovish. Okay, she was, if you listen to the whole interview, she was a little bit wobbly, a little bit hawkish and a little bit dovish, but she did leave the room open for June rate cuts, which to me was a surprise.
OK, George, I'm afraid we have to leave it there because we've got some breaking news to bring the viewers. But good to see you as ever. Thank you. Breaking news to bring you. The Home Office, we understand, has been reprimanded by the watchdog, the UK Standards Authority, after the government was accused of lying about clearing part of the asylum backlog. The chairman of the UK Statistics Authority, Sir Robert Choate, has warned that the episode may affect public trust. Doubtless we'll have a bit more on that throughout the day here on Sky News. Robert Choate, very, very influential and respected figure indeed. In the meantime, we've got some more breaking news for you. This concerns the banking sector, and it comes, as ever, from our city editor, Mark Kleiman. Mark, what have you heard?
Yeah, that's right, Ian. Interesting piece of news that the Chancellor, Jeremy Hunt, has called in the bosses of Britain's biggest banks for talks next week amid concerns in Whitehall that their weak share prices are inhibiting their appetite to lend into the wider UK economy. Now, I understand that this meeting will take place next Tuesday, and it will include representatives from Barclays, HSBC, Lloyds Banking Group, NatWest and Santander UK. And as I understand it, Ian, this has been orchestrated by Frank Pettigar. He's the former Morgan Stanley executive who is now Rishi Sunak's chief business advisor, and he wants them to discuss how the government might be able to take steps to stimulate growth of banks in order to reinvigorate their appetite for lending. Just very quickly, and interesting to note that over the last year, shares in NatWest, Lloyds and Barclays are all down pretty sharply. Only HSBC, which is obviously a much more international business, has seen its shares remain relatively flat during that period. And of course, news of this meeting next week has emerged while Jeremy Hunt is making his pitch to British and international business leaders at the World Economic Forum in Davos.
Yeah, absolutely fascinating development, that. Mark, thanks a million. Still to come here on Business Live, we'll be hearing about how improving women's health could deliver a boost to the global economy. Don't go away. The pound has rallied, moderation, interest rates peaking.
I'm up at 6%.
The highest for 14 years.
Will that be the peak? Will it be a little bit lower?
It's closer to a potential crash.
So many words, so many meanings. But what do they mean for you and your finances? Stay up to date on Sky News.
I'm Adam Parsons. I'm Sky's Europe correspondent based here in Brussels. Helicopters have been pulled up out and are being used as missiles to hurl at these police. Made by people who dare to challenge. Nice to see you again, Mr. Barnier. Why? Meeting you. Fishing does have the potential to stymie an enormous economic deal. We take you to the heart of stories that shape our world. What strikes you when you come to this glacier is not just the way in which the environment is changing, but the speed at which those changes are happening.
fly Emirates, fly better. Fly Emirates, fly better. Thank you.
Welcome back. We often talk about technology and innovation as being ways of driving economic growth, but there are sometimes more straightforward means of doing so. A report published today at the Davos summit reveals that women spend 25% more of their lives in debilitating pain and health than men, equating to 75 million years of life lost due to poor health or early death annually. It suggests that closing that health gap could boost the global economy to the tune of $1 trillion annually by 2040. Well, in response, a global alliance for women's health has been launched, with members including the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Swiss company Ferring Pharmaceuticals. Well, joining me now from Davos is the president of Ferring Pharmaceuticals, Per Falk. Per, welcome to you. This will actually surprise a lot of people, given that women on average live longer than men.
Yeah, they do live longer, but the issue is that they also live longer sick, so their disability-adjusted life years are much higher. And that means that they are taken out of production, out of a productive life and a contributory life more. So there is a systemic need to upgrade the quality of care and the recognition of the value of investing in women's healthcare.
Why does this gap exist between women's and men's health?
Well, there are several. There are, of course, those that we are obviously recognize as being female diseases of reproduction and other things. But there are all the others as well. There are diseases which are very common, but where women are overrepresented, and we don't understand why. And there are diseases where women are not overrepresented, but the disease presents itself very differently. So healthcare personnel or even members of the public are not aware of how this presents itself, and it delays diagnosis. You know, myocardial infarction, for instance, is a great example of that, where men have a very typical onset of disease, which everybody or many recognize, whereas the female onset is different.
Very briefly, Per, how quickly do you think this gap can be closed?
I think the gap can be closed over decades, unfortunately, because there are many systemic issues that needs to be addressed, and there's new data that needs to be generated. But it's important to remember that it's a big, audacious goal that actually benefits. It's not a problem to solve for women. It's an opportunity.
I'm so sorry, we're out of time. I do apologise. Thank you for joining me. That's it from me for now. Back at 4:30. See you then. Cheerio.